Recording has begun. Welcome to Ask Jim Friday. It is Friday, the 9th of February here, and in China, it is the beginning of the year of the dragon, the wood dragon.
Wow.
And so February 10th over there already, and all the emails I'm getting through WeChat or, all kinds of fireworks and special things and Happy New Year. So that's
Interesting. I was just at Chase Bank, and in the entryway with their water, they also had the red envelopes there. And I was wondering what that was about.
That's a nice little tradition. I don't know if I've still got one here, but I did for a while. The tradition is they get a red envelope and put money in it and give it to others. So if you're on the receiving end, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So, if you guys get the urge, I'm in.
I was gonna say, where do I sign up?
Well, I'm going to Key West on Sunday and taking Paula with me. I'm going to do 2 half-day programs on the Acorn Principle. And I'm going to take people into the book deeper. All of the people that will be there, and there'll be like 20 to 40, depending on whether the spouses are in the meeting. All of them are deeply immersed in DISC. So they all know that model backwards and forwards and can teach it. And so what I'm going to be doing is taking them beyond that. And I'll show you a couple of the slides that I'm going to use. Let me just a second. I'm going to end a duplicate meeting there and go to my slides. Let's see, just a second.
Congratulations on your relationship selling the new edition. Is it out there, or is it going to be released?
That is kind of exciting.
Is it released already?
It'll be out probably in March.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the Global Gurus for the whatever year in a row I've been selected. Global Gurus is an outfit that does an annual promotion where they accept nominees to be considered one of the top 30 in a handful of categories like communication, motivation, sales, leadership, things like that. And I was nominated ages ago, and they said, if you promote your nomination, get people to vote for you, then we'll get more followers and you'll get more votes and maybe you'll be one of the 30. So I did that. And this was back when I lived in California, and it worked. And I got acknowledged as one of the top motivational speakers and also as one of the top sales gurus. And that was nice. And then the next year it happened again. Hello, Craig, welcome aboard. And the next year after that, it happened again. And so I've stopped sending out notices or requests saying, vote for me, and just kind of let it organically go on its own. And sure enough, I end up renominated by somebody. And this year I was selected, I think, number 25 out of the sales gurus, whereas last year I was number 7. But it's pretty good company, Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, people like that, big names. So a nice little feather in my cap that's worth 0 financially, but it's good for credentials and bragging rights.
Very much so. Yeah.
So Craig is just back. He and I chatted yesterday. He's just back from Dubai.
Whoa.
Where he spent, what, 2 weeks? We don't hear you. Yep.
Yeah, I'm usually used to being there for like 4 to 6 days, but this was 12 days. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow.
I played for a couple days with some people, and then the rest was work.
Yep. Craig, do you have settings available on your screen where you can go? Let me show you what I'm going to be talking about. From this kind of a view, look at me, to this kind of a view, to this kind of a view.
I
This
do not know. Let me look.
This one, I'm about the same size as you right now. That's 65%. This is 78%. And this is 90%. So you
Yeah,
see
I'll look.
the difference in those? Yeah. Anyway, I think your image would come across better clicked back one step from where it is now. But if you can't adjust it, don't worry about it because it's not bad. It's just off balance with the other images. Okay.
Yep,
Is that
I'll
a
look.
setting
I'll
in
be working
Zoom?
on it right now.
What'd you say, Robin?
Is that a setting inside Zoom?
In mine, it's a setting inside. Let's see the name of this thing. Logitune. Logitune. I've got a Logitech Brio camera, and Logitune is a free app that allows you to control that camera.
Yeah, that won't be the same for everybody. That's in that software. Same way with me with Ecamm.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, this. I've got this.
Yeah.
So I can make all those changes, but that's in the software. If Craig is just on Zoom, he wouldn't have that option.
Right. Cool.
I'm looking.
Well, one of the things, Craig, going back to where I was just as you came in, I'm speaking twice in Key West this next week, each a 3-hour program. And it's for a small group of people who are all certified trainers for DISC. So clearly the least effective thing I could cover would be personality types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk with them about the Acorn Principle, and I'll show you where I'm going to start with this. Here we go. Got to make a full screen out of this image, and as soon as I do, then I'll
Is
go
this-
to screen share.
Is this a group that invited you to train them, or is this a group that you?
This is a group of
together?
people who hired me to be their keynote speaker.
Nice.
Okay. So can you see this slide?
Yes.
Okay. It'll come to full screen pretty soon, I think, because I clicked this little gizmo, but my computer's acting very slowly today. There you go. There you go. So what this says is what makes you you. And up at the top, it says behavior. And then you see the other things start to fill in.
Hmm.
Yes.
If you think about DISC or any of Carl Jung's version or social styles or my relationship strategies model, or the people that have blue, yellow, green, and red, or the people that have birds or other animals or whatever, all of
Dogs.
them are the same model. They're all DISC, okay? Because they're all based on 2 dimensions, which is directness, which is the pace a person moves at, fast or slow, and openness, whether a person's more self-revealing or more guarded. Self-revealing people tend to focus on the interaction. Guarded people tend to focus on the transaction, the task of whatever you're doing. And that produces the 4 styles that we all know. Okay. So that's the tip of this iceberg. Under the ground on this iceberg, we have all these other items. And these other items are what the Acorn Principle book is about. So take a look at that for a moment. If I know your behavior patterns, but I don't know your thinking style, then I won't understand how much information you can process at one time. So thinking style and intellectual bandwidth kind of go hand in hand. Bandwidth is your capacity for processing, and it's either operational, strategic, or conceptual. Operational being the smaller of the 3. And about 80% of the population is operational in their bandwidth, which means that's normal bandwidth. Strategic bandwidth is about 18% of the population. And that's usually the people you find in leadership positions, not necessarily a leadership job, but initiator, a person taking the lead and choosing the direction and solving the problems and so forth. And then about 2% of the population tends to fall in conceptual bandwidth, which those are the rare individuals that they can think about 3 or 4 different things at the same time efficiently, switching between them. They're the ones that can truly multitask. But for most people, multitasking is just quick switching. And for the vast majority of people, quick switching doesn't work. For example, my wife, Paula, has what I would call high operational bandwidth. So she can take 1 or 2 subjects at a time, handle them quite well, and be just totally brilliant in thinking about them. Give her 3, and she starts getting either confused or kind of thrown off her pace. Give her 4 items to think about, or 1 item with 5 or 6 dimensions to it, and she'd rather talk about something else. So if I'm selling to her, I need to be clear, simple, and focused on the one thing I'm selling until I get to understanding on that, and then we can move to the next one. Does that make sense? Okay. So if she's selling to me, I'm going to be thinking about things that she's not yet bothering to think about. So she might say, Jim, I think we ought to get a new car. And I'm thinking about lifestyle and about having another car and about other decisions that are balanced against that. And she's saying, should we get a Chevrolet or a Ford? And I'm thinking, should we move to a downtown location and eliminate the need for cars? You see what I'm getting at? If your selling is incompatible with their bandwidth, then it's not going to click until you find a meeting point where the two of you are on the same wavelength. So if you can learn to read intellectual bandwidth, which is fairly simple once you learn it, then you can adapt to other people for the short term for a conversation much more successfully. Okay.
I haven't really heard that term much in relationship to what you just said,
Yeah.
which is interesting to me. And my question would be, well, how do you figure that out? How do you learn the intellectual bandwidth that someone has? How would I know that you would be thinking about moving downtown?
Yeah. There are 9 indicators of intellectual bandwidth that are covered in the book, The Acorn Principle. And you can learn pretty quickly and easily to observe those, but you have to be looking for them. It's kind of like if there's a color that's not on the usual spectrum, your eyes and brain will perceive it, but you won't notice it because you don't have a file for it. But once you recognize that color, that means your brain has created a file for that, and you'll start noticing it more. It's kind of like if I ask, have you ever seen the automobile brand Rivian, Rivian? And you say, no, I've never even heard of it. And I tell you a little bit about it, and then we finish our conversation and go on about our lives.
Riviera.
Guaranteed, sometime in the next week, you're going to say, look at that, that's a Rivian. And the person with you says, yeah, that they live 3 blocks from us. I see it all the time. Well, so did you, but you never noticed it before because you didn't have a file in your head for Rivian. So once you learn how to perceive, how to observe intellectual bandwidth differences, then that'll become a fairly simple thing for you. And then let's shift to the other side where it says thinking style. Thinking style is the multiple intelligences. What's his name? Howard Gardner wrote the book Frames of Mind. Howard Gardner from Harvard wrote the book Frames of Mind several years ago, and it's the theory of multiple intelligences. And until he had written that book, you never heard about different types of intelligence. And after he wrote that book and people realized there was musical intelligence, mathematical intelligence, spatial and visual intelligence, being able to visualize something that's not in front of you, interpersonal intelligence, verbal intelligence, and so forth. You know, when you realize there are multiple types of being smart, then the question no longer is how smart are you? It's how are you smart? And that's a whole big new field to think and talk about, right? And so once this was popularized and books on this and seminars and so forth started being presented all over the nation, then people had a new file for thinking about intellect, not just IQ, not just the Stanford Binet intelligence test or the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Index or the whatever it was out there. They had a new way of thinking about intelligence. Along comes Daniel Goleman, Goleman. Daniel Goleman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. People's minds were blown. It took something they already knew and gave them a way to think about it. Because we all understood emotional intelligence. We all recognized it, but we didn't think about it or talk about it effectively because we hadn't created a language around it. And Goleman said, if you're emotionally intelligent, you can read people, you can adapt to people, you're self-aware, you can manage your own behavior more effectively, you understand feelings, and people are saying, oh my God, we need that. And so he got booked solid, and lots of other people said, I speak on that too. And they got booked solid, and articles were published everywhere, you know, and that whole subject became part of the standard normal American vocabulary. Whereas a year before that book, nobody ever talked about that.
Right.
Okay, now that's just that one level. Now notice between the word behavior and the thinking style and bandwidth is the word values. Values do not determine what's important to you. They determine why it's important to you. So you could ask an audience, how many of you care about money? All the hands go up. Then you start asking them, why do you care about money? And you get answers like, it gives me power. I can do anything I want. The next person says, it allows me to care for my loved ones. The next one says, it allows me to support causes that I believe in. The next one says, it gives me flexibility and I'm not inhibited by cost, so I can go ahead and do what needs to be done. So everybody looks at money in this instance differently because they're looking through the filter of their own value system. And there are 7 values that all people who breathe have all 7, but not in the same order. What might be your top 3 could be my bottom 3, which would mean we would always be disagreeing on those 3 things. If you look at couples and you do these profiles with couples, and I've done this with thousands, when I had the business called the Carefree Institute, when you look at couples, if you can tell me what their values are, I can tell you what they argue about. And if you can tell me what their values are, I can tell you what bonds them together. And there are 7 natural values. You say, wait a minute. You learn values from mom and dad and school and church and society. Yes, you do. But those are learned values. That's like paint on the outside of the house. They change the color of the house, but they don't change the house. So the values we learn are values that help us navigate society better and determine who our tribe is and who we fit in with. But the values that are absolutely built into the fabric of our heart, those 7 values are part of who you are. And once you know your top values and your bottom values, you can address all 7 of them anytime you feel like it. But if you look back at your life, you'll find that every major decision you ever made was compatible with your top values. And every bad choice you ever made was probably a short-term decision to accommodate one of your lesser values. So this is fascinating stuff we could talk about for days on end, weeks on end. Now, I'm going to do an information overload intentionally here because I want you to see and feel how much weight the bottom of that iceberg really has. Because most of us have been accustomed to looking at behavior and behavior styles or patterns and thinking that that was most of the picture. Nope. That's just the nib, okay? Background imprint. In my family, my sister Kathy and I grew up at the same time, with the exception of our 3 years of age difference, in the same household under the same circumstances. And the difference between us was those 3 years and our gender. She's female, I'm male, okay? She considered her background, her life experience growing up, to be disadvantageous and unsupportive. I considered my background to be advantageous and highly supportive. Mom spent more time nurturing Kathy than she did me. So how could that be? Well, it's what we've determined through all the studies that go with all this, and all of this is deeply rooted in a whole lot of psychological research that goes beyond me, because I had a team of psychological researchers from Arizona State University's psychological testing service who were doing the heavy lifting on this and coming up with all the documentation and validation that was necessary. So what we've determined is that it's not the background experience a person has that determines how it affects them. It's the way they interpreted that experience. So when you look at your own background and you look at another person with the virtually identical background, there might be a vast difference in whether you're starting at ground zero or kind of 1 or 2 steps behind versus them. And so what we call this on the velocity, personal velocity scale, is your advantage. From 0 starting point, going upward to 100% in life, in your velocity scale, your advantage, we calculated would a typical advantage provided by a person's background with an American upbringing would be about a score of 20 out of that 100. Whereas somebody starting in Bangladesh in abject poverty that would be starting at 0 or below 0, with the same thinking style, the same intellectual bandwidth, same values, same behavioral style, same IQ, and same physical ability, that background imprint would determine a lot of the difference in achievement likelihood between those 2 people. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's background imprint. Now let's set that aside. Personal velocity. Every person has sort of like an energy setting inside, a metronome that their life operates by. And it's sort of part of their DNA. That's not a technical truth, but it's a good way to think about it. So everybody is either a higher moderate, or lower energy person in general. And I'm not talking about their nutrition. I'm not talking about their exercise or their rest or their stress, that they're dealing with. I mean, in general, just genetically, people are geared to be either racehorses or quarter horses or part of a team, draft horses, right? And if you look at nature in general, aren't all animal species that way? Some of them are geared for high velocity, cheetahs, right? Some of them are geared for lower velocity, sloth. Some of them moderate velocity, the house cat, right? Okay, so people are the same way to an extent. And you consider how many different genetic variances of human exist on Earth. Good Lord, it's endless. And look at the circumstances they grew up in and adapted to over centuries of time, creating the type of human they are today, which would explain races and body types and everything else you can imagine. So if that's a given, what's a way to think about it? A simple, easy way to think about it is start noticing personal velocity, high, moderate, low. People who, if the house isn't on fire, they'll set it on fire because they need the excitement, right? I mean, not to damage something, but to have the challenge, right? They get up in the morning and they think, I have no idea where I am or what I'm going to do. How great is that? And another person wakes up and says, oh my God, I have no idea where I am or what I'm going to do. All is lost. What's the difference in the two? Well, one of them thrives on challenge and the other one's totally intimidated by challenge. Okay, let's go back to me and Paula for a minute. Paula's velocity is low. She is genetically suited to be a homemaker and a mother. She is just absolutely ideal for that. And she loves it. And life goes on and she's got lots of friendships that go for generations and, life is good. Well, she married a guy who's not like that. And her dad was like that. He worked in a factory for 35 years, same job, same daily routine, same lunch every day for 35 years. And so when we got married shortly thereafter, she said, can't you just be happy with what you've got? And I said, no. And she said, well, how sad? I said, no. How exciting. And she said, well, I don't understand why you have to be so greedy. I said, I don't want what other people have. I want more of what I can have. And she said, well, I don't understand. And I said, well, what about you? She said, well, I'm happy with what we've got. I said, you don't want a new stereo? She said, well, I'd like a better one. Oh, do you want a new car? Well, no, I'm okay with this one. Well, how long do you want to keep it? Well, a couple of years. Would you like to go to Disneyland? Well, not this year, but yeah. Then I started getting her to admit to what she wanted in life, what appealed to her. And she realized there were lots of things beyond our current status quo that were very appealing to her, but she wasn't dreaming of doing them actively. I was dreaming and then planning and then actually working toward doing those things. And so that was the difference in velocity. Should she be like me? Absolutely not. That would have been cruel. Are you leaving, Robin? Okay. Take care. Glad you
Sorry,
dropped.
my dog is ready. They got to go pick her up, and she's blind and she freaks out when she's in the kennel. So I got to run.
Okay. Take
Sorry.
care.
I love that story, by the way.
Good. Thank you.
Bye.
So velocity differences. Think
Yeah.
about your own. Is your personal velocity, looking back over your life, high, moderate, or lower? No one of them is better than the other. But if you've made the choice of a high velocity lifestyle and you're a low velocity person, Burnout will be your constant companion. You will frequently be taking medication to deal with your stresses. So choose a lifestyle, a career path, a work style, a relationship that is compatible with your velocity, not a match, compatible with. In Paula's case and mine, we would both be miserable if we had married someone just like us. Because if I'd married someone like me, we'd be competing all the time. If she'd married someone just like her, she would have had the kind of life that she had known all her life, and she would have missed out on a bunch of really exciting things we've done over the last 53 years. Okay? So personal velocity is something to observe and understand, not something to try to change. However, life, society, and the world tends to reward higher velocity more than lower velocity. People like Elon Musk are going to get more money and more opportunities than people like, I don't know, name somebody who's just living a mundane, routine life, you know? So what does that mean? That mean that despite what you just said, Jim, I should aspire to higher velocity? No, it means that the more you can operate at the top of your zone of velocity, the top of your zone, meaning you're challenging yourself, but not so much you get anxious and stressed, and you're challenging yourself enough that you're not getting bored or apathetic. So you stay in your zone toward the top of it, you will have the most productive and most satisfying life that you could have based on velocity alone. So what I need to do is moderate my velocity to not be so low that I'm not facing challenges. Because if I retired in the traditional sense, I would probably die within 2 years. Why? Because nothing was challenging me. See, my dad retired at age 62. He took early retirement from the telephone company because he didn't enjoy his work as a telephone lineman and repairman. But he didn't retire to something. He retired from something. And so he started hanging out with his buddies, and they'd go deer hunting and they'd go fishing, and they'd work at the farm of a friend that lived outside of town and raise some vegetables and things like that. But life was pretty boring for him because nothing was challenging him. And he had a fairly high velocity, not high like me, but higher. And he ended up getting overweight and then getting hardening of the arteries, and he passed away at age 80. Well, that's just 2 years away from what I am right now. And I feel like I got a lot more runway left ahead of me. So the idea of retirement to me just means category change. So if I retire from, say, professional speaking, it's going to be to something else that I think is bigger than me. Because a high velocity person needs a challenge that they don't know how to handle. They need something that scares them a little bit, something that pushes them to grow and learn and discover in order to achieve it. Now, luckily, most of the world doesn't have high velocity or low velocity, they have moderate velocity. So that would be the velocity of virtually everybody you know, because the people we know represent a pretty good cross-section of society. And we know some low velocity folks, and we know some absolute racehorses. But most people we know don't fit either of those two categories. So all I'm saying is it's really, really helpful when you learn how to observe velocity differences. Okay? Now let's look at 3 more quickly, because mindset's going to be sort of bada bing, bada boom. Primary relationships. Your life and mine are a reflection of the people we spend the most time with. They say that your income tends to be equal to or similar to the 5 people you spend the most time around. And that may be true. Certainly your level of participation in society would match that. But look at your primary relationships. Every one of us, pardon me, has an inner circle of the people that matter the most to us. I don't mean just the most to our heart, but the most to our life experience. So this is not nostalgia thinking about grandma that you loved so much. I'm talking about if you had to call a board meeting for your life, who would be the board members? They're going to be somewhere between 3 and 12 people. Optimum would be around 5 to 8 people. How do you know if someone's in your inner circle versus your outer circle? Because at our level, our circle is pretty doggone huge. For most people up and down the neighborhood, their circle's kind of small. But for people like you, Sandy and Craig and me and, Christina and Robin and the others and Lisa Marie in this group, we know so many people in so many different categories, and that, the echo effect of our behavior could sometimes have worldwide implications, couldn't it, Craig?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So your primary relationships, how do you know someone's in your inner circle? Here's the key. If they left, you would feel the need to replace them. These are the people you get your primary results through. So it may be one of them's a personal assistant. Maybe one of them's a spouse. It may be one of them's a best friend who's just the only person that can really listen to you, and you're able to bare your heart with them. It may be a person who's a mentor who inspires you. It may be somebody who is a problem solver that you turn to. It may be somebody who just makes you feel so good about yourself you can't wait to see them again, right? So we've got inner circles, all of us, but we usually haven't stopped to think of who's in it. Well, once you do, man, you can take so much more control of your life. I call that relationship intelligence, this whole category of exploring this. And I've written a book about it that has not been published. It's not finalized or refined yet. But I own the trademark, relationship intelligence. And relationship intelligence means being more intelligent about relationships. It's that hard. Yeah. So if you look at your primary relationships, your inner circle, there are 3 essentials for every one of those relationships if it's going to be optimal. Number 1, both of you have to want the relationship to work and are willing to make it so. In other words, both of you have to be committed to the success of that relationship. Because if only one of you are, it's doomed. You can hold it up for a while, but sooner or later, if they don't do their part, it's over. Okay? So the second essential, truthful communication, meaning that good news travels fast between you and bad news travels fast between you. And if you're ticked off at the other person, you don't wait for them to notice it. You bring it up and deal with it. If you are feeling love for the other person or admiration or something, you don't assume they get it, you verbalize it. So good news and bad news travels freely without inhibition. So that's open communication. Number 3, essential for every relationship, clear expectations, which usually means agreements in a business relationship. I need to know what I can expect from you and what I probably shouldn't expect from you. And you need to know the reverse, right? Because if you come to work for me expecting me to be your coach and mentor and guide, and I only expect to be your supervisor, then we got a conflict coming.
Yep.
Sooner or later, right? If I go to work for you and you expect to be my coach and mentor and partner and fellow traveler in life. And I just expect you to give me assignments and reward me when I do them well. Sooner or later, there's going to be a big conflict. All right. So we need clear agreements on what to expect. When I had my staff working for me, the last time I had real-time employees in San Diego, I had an agreement with every one of them, each of them. And the agreement was what I called a role agreement that defined what are you paid to do, meaning the outcomes, not the job. What are your areas of responsibility? Because if you were in charge of sales, that didn't mean you were in charge of determining the annual sales budget. That was my job, my company, right? You were in charge of determining how to use that sales budget. And I would certainly accept your input and request, but I would determine the budget because I owned the business and you didn't, right? So there are areas you're responsible for and areas beyond your responsibility. Okay, so I had role, what you're paid to do, areas of responsibility, and then I had what I expect from you, what you can expect from me. And it was things like, I expect you will show up at work on time without having to be reminded, and you'll be sober and you'll look good and smell good. Okay, I expect that you will constantly learn and get better at your job without me having to increase your pay in order to get you to do so. I expect you'll tell me the truth 100% of the time and resign the day before you lie to me. In fact, I'll make it contractual. And I did. And then I said, okay, let's flip it over and let's look at the other side. That wasn't the complete list. The other side, you expect to have the tools you need to do your job, to have access to me all the time whenever you need me, to have me tell you the truth 100% of the time. And if I don't, you can fire me and I'll give you 2 weeks severance pay. To have ongoing support in learning more and becoming better, to have my admiration, respect, and encouragement. You know, so we listed all the things that we each wanted, and I had to help them come up with their list. And then we'd both sign it. And that was our working relationship, expectations. It really made a difference in the degree of commitment I got from each of my people. So I didn't have nearly the turnover that many of my colleagues had. All right. End of that category. 2 more to go, and one of them will go real quickly. Preferred sources. If I ask you to determine what is the truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth, where are you going to look? Well, some people say, I'm going to look online. I'm going to do my own research. In other words, they rely on their own rational decision-making process to determine what is true, which, by the way, is limited by what they can access. So if they can't access all the information, they can't know the whole truth. They can only know a portion of it, but they're relying on themselves to be the best decision maker for what is the truth. Other people say, no, I mean, I do that, but that's just my due diligence. I always go to my guru, and they've got some guru that they believe in, and that person tells them what's really so. So what they've done is a form of hero worship. They put a person in the position of being their decision maker instead of them being their decision maker, which is fine up till the final decision. But the final decision needs to be an enlightened decision. Agreed? Okay. Some people say, no, it's not a person, it's a source. It's the Bible, it's the dictionary, it's Wikipedia, it's, name your source. Whatever that source is, they say, well, it says in the book, da, 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 da. And so that's where they think the real truth lives. Okay. Others rely on more of a spiritual, like an intuitive sense. And if I really need to know the truth, I pray about it. Well, good for you and God bless you. Is that the only thing you do? Because you better have a straight pipeline and know that you're talking to the right person if you're going to rely on that one. All right.
Agreed.
So preferred sources might be the scientific method. No, Jim, look, let's find out what's really so. And they apply the scientific method, or they apply mathematics or some other kind of principle like that to it. Well, that's good to a point. But since there are so many sources of truth available to us, like personal experience, gut feeling, on and on and on, the consensus of the group, phone a friend, that kind of thing. If there are so many sources available to us and we say only one or two of those are the real truth, aren't we saying it's okay with me if I'm wrong on this? I'm just saying. And everybody knows what their preferred sources are, although they may not have thought about it that way. So if I bring you a proposal that's very expensive and is going to take a lot of your time and energy, and I say, okay, Sandy, I want you to be a full partner in this with your name on the company. If I come to you with something that's that big of a commitment for you, wouldn't you want to make sure you had checked more sources than just one or two? Yeah. Okay, the final one, mindset. Let's just simplify it. Growth mindset, scarcity mindset. That's using the model that Carol Dweck used in her book. Well, mindset is, you either look at the world as infinite and having more than enough for everyone, if nobody's greedy and mean, or you look at it as limited. And if you don't get yours, if anyone else gets some, that means you don't get yours. And so you constantly competing with the rest of the world, and you're operating from jealousy or fear or lack.
And that's the scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah, the scarcity mindset. So there's not enough to go around versus abundance mindset, growth mindset. There's plenty to go around. We just hadn't figured out how to distribute it yet. It's like the people that say, oh my God, we're going to run out of water. We're all going to die. Well, if you look at the world today, you will find there are plenty of places on earth where there's flooding, where there's so much extra water that people are saying, please make it stop. So it's not a water shortage, it's a distribution problem. If you look at people who are starving, is it because the food doesn't exist or couldn't grow? No, it's because of the distribution problem, right? And there are certain areas of the earth that are traditionally over time a desert, and others that are a rainforest, and others that are 70% of the earth, which is ocean. Okay, so the only problem is a distribution problem. And if you look at the world that way, not just physically, but opportunity-wise, how much could you succeed to the infinite, beyond anything any humans ever perceived? I mean, look at Elon Musk and how he thinks and what he's been able to do that people thought that was impossible. You can't bring a rocket back down to Earth without wings on it and land it on the exact spot where you want it to land. Yeah, maybe you can. And he did. Good Lord. You can't put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. Yeah, you can, etc. So mindset. It's pretty easy to tell if someone's coming from scarcity or abundance. So when you're looking at someone, your spouse, your coworker, your partner, your children, your neighbor, your client, your prospect, your supplier, don't let yourself be content to simply look at their behavior and assume the rest of it. Because the behavior is not a symptom of your values. It's the way you express your values. It's not a symptom of your thinking style. It's the way you express it, etc., for all those other items. So the amount of human understanding that's possible versus what most people settle for is like the difference between the continent of North America and the city of Conway, Arkansas. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Give me some feedback on that. I'd love to hear your reactions.
Man, that's a lot of content there.
Yeah, it is. Interesting. Yeah, so I graduated UCSB with a psych major in econ
Yep.
and learned all that. And I've always been interested in personal development, always, even since I was a child. But and then seeing how it's been working in the business world and all, it's been really fascinating. And the DISC has been exciting because it kind of brought up a lot of things I forgot that I had learned years ago and didn't, kind of just put it into perspective. And
Yeah.
for you to have names for things, it helps to identify
Well,
what's what.
it's kind of like if you go to like where the Maori tribes from, near New Zealand, but there's a specific island, not Tonga, wherever. Those people don't have a word for snow. Why wouldn't they have a word for snow? Never experienced it.
Mm.
Okay. And then you look at Alaska that go to the Inuit tribes or the Tlingit Haida or somebody up in the Alaska Eskimos. They have 25 different words for snow. Because snow's not just snow.
Right.
It's kind of
That's
like
right.
clouds aren't just clouds. They're cumulonimbus and cirrus and stratus and, all that sort. Until we have a language, we don't have a way of thinking about it efficiently.
Mm.
So when you look at dogs, you just say it's a dog. No.
Yeah.
It's a Great Dane Chihuahua mix. No, it's not. I mean, you might have something you grew in a lab like that, but those two dogs ain't mating, right? So once you have a way of thinking about it, everything else starts working better.
Mhm.
That's what education's all about, is giving a language and a structure to life so that people know this is not just a spanner, as they would say in England, but it's a socket wrench, or it's a crescent wrench, or it's a number 3, whatever, or it's an Allen wrench. I mean, all of a sudden, all those tools start to take on meaning. And you realize that's not just a piece of metal hanging on the wall. That's there to help me get the wheels off my car if I have a flat tire.
So really it's about being articulate with the description.
Yeah.
Mm.
And articulate requires that you know the meaning of what you're saying. Because you could know the words, the sounds, and you would appear to be articulate, but not be articulate.
Sounds like corporate America.
Yeah. Yeah, there are plenty of posers. It's like the people that ride up on their big old tricked out Harleys like this, and the blood's drained out of their arms 10 minutes after they got on the ride, right? So their hands are now numb, but it looks cool to be like this, so they don't want to take their hands down. So occasionally they'll be riding along and they say, man, I need to stop. And they come to a stop sign and they put their hand down and shake blood back into it, and then do the other one, and then they take off again. Now, you can't control the bike very well when your weight is distributed that way and your feet are out front, because the only thing you have to steer with is the slight pull you can exert here and the wiggling of your butt. But if the bike is like this, like I am right now, my weight is evenly distributed between the balls of my feet, which are on the pegs, my seat, which is on the seat, and my hands, which are leaning slightly onto the handlebars. So I've got all those points of weight distribution to use in steering the bike instantly where I want it to, or stopping it more quickly. So the people here are not articulate, but they might know the words.
Boy,
And
if that's not corporate
here-
America, I don't know what is.
People here are more likely to be able to race or just ride or whatever, huge difference. But I,
You know, in looking at the picture that you had mindset on the bottom.
yeah,
And I'm looking at that going, that really is the foundation. Is our mindset built on sand or is it built on a rock?
yeah,
And then the primary relationships and the preferred sources and everything is really the building blocks up to the behavior, but the mindset is the foundation.
yeah. And the rest of them are in no particular order in that graphic.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's so many people to study. I've got all these books lined up here. It's just a little tiny flavor of, like a Hershey's Kiss of all the things that I went through with my team to come to this concept and this model that I call the Acorn Principle. And
So do you find when you're working with
I got the
groups
book right here.
there it is.
that you're able to identify certain weak spots and then your focus of your training goes towards them developing
Not
those?
necessarily. Sometimes my training is strictly on the strong spots, to make them better and better at their strength.
Uh-huh.
It's like Peter Drucker used to say, you develop the strengths and you make the weaknesses irrelevant. And in his
That
Austrian,
makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at a company, the first thing I look at from this perspective is I look at who are the primary players. Who's the CEO? Who are the 2 or 3 people maybe at the top of the organization or the heart of the organization that make it what it is, that if they left, the organization wouldn't exist. Okay. And I want to know what's their bandwidth, so I know what level they're thinking on, what's their velocity, which tells me how much they want, how big their ambition is. When they say we want to be the best in the industry, the best in the world, and da 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 da. Say, do you really? Well, isn't that a good thing to set as a goal? Not if it's not coming from you.
Mm.
Well, I thought we were expected to. Aha. So they were going on external expectations instead of internal drive. And that tells me this is not a person with high achievement aspirations. It's a person that's seeking to do what they think will impress people or get them approval from somebody that they admire, or from a teacher that's long since dead that they're still trying to get an A from.
Do
Right?
you find that's like the majority of people?
Well, most people aren't leaders.
Yeah.
And
They
that's
think
good.
they are.
If most people were leaders, then it would be chaos beyond
Now, the
what it is
next
today.
challenge is for the leaders to motivate or help them to
Yeah,
want to grow.
yeah. And
As-
and not to, what you've got to do is understand your people well enough that you know who on their own aspires to bigger things and who does not. Well, it may be, let's say, for example, Paula. Paula's velocity is fairly low. Our son's velocity is higher than hers and lower than mine. I'm the kind, my old joke is, if Paula went out to get China, she'd be going after dinnerware and I'd be going after real estate. And there's a huge difference in the homework, right?
Yeah.
So if Paula were on your team, there would never be a point where she would step up and say, let's be the best in the business. Never. Not because
It's
she
not how
doesn't think
she's
it's a good
wired.
idea. It's because it's not coming from her. What'd you say, Craig?
Yeah, it's not how she's wired.
No, it's not in her. Okay. However, she loves being part of a team. She loves being the go-to person. She loves being the one that you say, you know what? If we didn't have more people like Paula, we couldn't do these things. So Paula, thank you for being here. And so she's really happy to be part of a team. It's like working out. Her preferred workout is jazzercise. Why? Because it's a social activity. My preferred workout is going for a run or a hike alone. It's okay if other people are nearby, but I'm not depending on or interacting with them until it's over. Right? So I'm just pushing for my personal best time for that day. And then I go, phew, okay, now let's talk. And they used to call me the running back in our hiking group that I was in for 18 years. They said, Cathcart, why don't you just stroll back like everybody else? So it's because I love running on the trails after I'm fully warmed up. And so I would always run down the hills and up the next one. And, and just, I'd get to coffee like 20 minutes before the rest of the group sometimes. One day they joked with me. They'd say, constantly, they'd say, Jim, did you go home and shower? I said, no. And maybe I'd change t-shirts in my car before I went to the coffee shop. And so I didn't look sweaty and ugly like some of them. And so, what did you do? Go home and shower? Well, one day we were having a hike. Afterwards, we were going to one of our members' homes, luxury home, for a killer brunch. And so on the hike, we took the picture at the top. The whole group had finally gotten there. And I said, okay, see ya. And I go running down the hill and over the next hills. And, it's 3 miles back to the car. Well, I got there quick enough that I could go home. And I literally did shower and put on a tuxedo and showed up at breakfast where they're all sweaty hikers and I'm in a tux. And that kind of put that to rest. But only a high velocity guy would do that.
Right.
Right. I mean, Paula would never do that, even if she was shamed into it or paid extra to do it. No, that's just, I don't think, nah, So what we've got to do is we look at let's say our clients or our prospective clients, and we just ask the kind of questions that tend to reveal more of these things. Now, one of the first things I want to know is what's their level of aspiration, their velocity. And one of the things in this that I presented to you is when you're going up that hill, do you want to be competent, excellent, expert, leading authority, celebrity, or star? That tells me your velocity, probably. Okay. And another thing I want to know is how much are you willing to take on? How big a bite do you want out of this animal? Because your aspiration might be to go to the top, but you're not in a hurry. Oh, well, okay, we'll build on that and look for other ways to advance you through resources instead of only through your own energy. But if you say, no, bring it. Okay, let's go for the gusto. And so, we go quit everything, sell everything we own, and commit our full life to the achievement of that pinnacle. So that's just a way to think about this sort of thing.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I feel like I had a workout just telling about it.
So this is part of this is the Acorn Principle.
Correct.
The book, which I have here. And part of that is included in your relationship selling book, or no? That's
Relationship selling book is a completely separate thing focused on sales and
sales.
building a sales related business. Yeah.
That'll be good. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to sharing that with more people.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate the way you've been sharing. That's wonderful. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you both. And I think we created
Likewise.
a recording here that will be fascinating to look back on and to watch it again and again.
Yes.
There's so
Yeah.
much depth to it, especially if you're reading the book and you just take it a chapter at a time and then maybe come back and watch a portion of this video. I think it'll be a good tool for you. Oh, by the way, I want to just make a matter of record. I was thinking about Christina Richter when I woke up this morning, And I was thinking about her company, Inspiritus, Inspiritus. And, you know, she's been kind of working to define what's my real message, what's my brand, my focus. And what we've been working with lately is the concept of sales leadership, because it does pretty much encapsulate all the training, the speaking, consulting that she does. And so I was thinking like a networking conversation. Hi, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. What's your name? Christina Richter. What do you do? Sales leadership. Really, you're a sales leader? Well, yes, I have been, but I teach it. And I help others become sales leaders, and I help organizations become the sales leaders in their niche. Really, how do you do that? Well, my company is called Inspiritus, which means in igniting the spirit in us.
That's
So
great.
I put the heart back in corporate or back in business. And all of my training is to get people fully invested in what they're doing, not just skilled at doing the pieces of it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good stadium pitch.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
you guys have a great day, great
Okay.
week. I'm going to go to Florida, to Key West Sunday. Next Friday, I'll be in Tampa, so I'll probably do this from there. Same time as always. And same link, you know, meetlink.co/Cathcart that you used today. And in the meantime, send me any questions, any, you know, comments, anything you need from me, ask for it. Okay.
Well,
You
Gino
got it.
says hello. He wanted
Oh,
me to tell you.
great. Tell him I said, howdy, nice work
Okay.
on that kitchen. Nice.
Oh,
Wow.
well.
Is it fun to use the new kitchen?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's been a while. I just shared the video of
Oh, is
how
that
it
right?
came
Okay.
about. But yeah, I'd love to get him on one of these calls sometime, but
All right.
right. Well,
Yeah.
have a good one. Say hi to Paula.
I'll do
Okay.
it. Bye-bye. Bye.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.